Hello. Another day. I spend a lot of my time on drugs, not eating, not sleeping. It's hard to know what's degrading me because I use them to get rid of pain, and the pain also degrades me. And if I use no drugs, then I feel really bad. If I use a lot of drugs, it probably gets worse, but I feel better. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm doing nothing, I suppose. Playing the same game over and over again, getting nowhere. Watching the same TV shows over and over again. I suppose the only thing I do that's novel on a day-to-day basis is write different things. I mean, I don't write. Sometimes I write the same thing. Of course, I don't remember everything I've ever written, and I do kind of get this feeling sometimes. Like, I've probably written about this before, but the second time you write about it, it's not the same anyway. Whereas the second time you watch a TV show alone in your room, just laying there, trying not to feel existence, it's pretty similar. And the third and fourth and fifth and sixth. What do I want? Um, I don't. I don't really feel like the part of me that has permission to speak has permission to access the part of me that wants. I suppose to talk about it in a detached manner, as is the only way I can. Um, it's hard. It's hard to wrap my brain around what is inherently just a feeling. My desires are normal. They just consist of things that are like publicly frowned upon because you're not supposed to do them in public, but it's confusing, right? It's like if you were to pee in public, someone would yell at you for peeing in public. They wouldn't yell at you for peeing. And I guess what I'm referencing is sexual things, and they're treated as though they're like bad. And I believe in people growing up. I don't know, trusting adults, which was a mistake. I always thought, oh well, they're older than me. They tell me that they know and that I don't, so that's probably correct. And it seemed like they're like, oh, that's bad. I'm like, okay, well then it's bad then. It's not bad. Doing it in public is bad, and people are just too childish to talk about it. How do we get so immature? Oh no, we can't talk about sex. Oh, that's such a problematic thing. No, no, don't teach it in schools. No, don't teach it at home. I want to handle it very, very carefully, very extremely carefully. It imparts this idea that it's to be handled with much more care than it should, because the average person probably treats it with more reckless abandon than it should. But the thing about those rules that you put in place to try to corral everyone is they don't actually reach people who act with reckless abandon, and so you only end up making laws for people who pay attention, who aren't the people who need the corralling in the first place. It doesn't work to just scorn the public. It doesn't help. Just introducing this vitriol and hatred, and what am I doing? Scorning the public. Why? Because in this modern context of seeing thousands of people per day, we don't know who says things. We just pick shit up, and in history, all of human history, up until pretty freaking recently, we had the ability to know who said things by building repeated interactions with people. And now it's just like, you read an article, by who? Well, I don't know. Who wrote this article? Who wrote that article? Who did this research? Who did that research? We don't attribute personhood to anything anymore, so we scream into the void, and the only part of the void that listens is the part that doesn't need to listen. It's extremely ineffective. It's undigested. It's backed up psychological undigestibles. Backed up undigestibles. Does that sound familiar? What other part of the body creates backed up undigestibles? Your asshole. That's what. Well, it doesn't create them, but that's where they come from. That's where they come at. Semantics. When humans moved from tribes into cities, one thing that they didn't quite get right away was to not just shit everywhere. Remember when London just had rivers of shit running through it? Disgusting. Cities are disgusting. At least American cities. They smell like French fry grease and car tires. It's probably alienating, but, they should have more trees. It's not that cities are inherently bad. They're just crafted really poorly. They're not made for humans. They're made for cars. And while living inside of a spaceship in its entirety, to the point where the spaceship and the human integrate, i.e. a kind of like Gomtu style relationship, is pretty cool. We can't do that on Earth, because Earth should be for Earthens, not amalgam robots who are better designed for space travel than the land that we also need to walk on just to facilitate our lives as human beings. And the French fry grease wouldn't smell nearly as bad if it weren't also mixed with car tires. I mean, I like fries. Who doesn't like fries? They're fat, but they're good. I had a deep fried Twinkie once. That was good. What was I talking about? I don't know. I've run out of water, and I'm not going to get up and go get water with the camera still rolling. So, the remainder of the time here is limited. I don't know what I've said. I don't know what the point is. Just to talk. I have a moment where I'm not surrounded by people. Not that I'm really around people ever, but there are people outside the walls, and I worry about every single sound that I make. And for a brief time, I am left alone, and it is a bit uplifting, I suppose. I feel like I can breathe a little. So, I'm talking to no one. Do I plan on posting this? No. I mean, posting, I suppose, would have higher potential of interacting with humans than not posting, although the likelihood of that is not necessarily very high. But I don't feel like I deserve to occupy space. And I know people are like, oh, that's ridiculous, especially on the internet. It's a pile of heaping shit trash. Yeah, I still feel bad about adding to it. I mean, I get it. Trash. Trash. Trash, trash, trash. What is trash? Trash is, if I understand the concept, entropy, basically. Entropy is when energy exists in a form that it is inaccessible to other forms. Right? Like the heat death of the universe, the entropic heat death of the universe will be when all energy has syncopated throughout everything, and it just becomes completely inaccessible. It's not that it's not there, it's in fact everywhere. It just is inaccessible if there are no discrepancies to cause it to move. So entropy is sequestered energy. Trash is sequestered energy. Entropy is inaccessible energy. Through whatever means. It doesn't have to be sequestering. Although I suppose you could define sequestering by whatever means makes something inaccessible. So trash is inaccessible energy. It's not a new thing. It's not a new thing. I mean, I can't reach that far back with my stupid monkey brain, but, like, humans didn't invent trash. Where do we even get trash? Trash. It's becoming accessible, as everything does. Evolution! Evolution's pretty cool. It saves our ass. It's like evolution is like the horizontal direction when you're plummeting toward a planet and wasting all of your gravitational potential energy. Horizontal motion just saves it. So you can go whoom, 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 and get so much more energy out of that. Feels like evolution is like the horizontal motion to our entropic fall. It really saves our ass so many times, and we should be more thankful and less individualistic, because it's just entirely unrealistic. Ooh, I did everything that I ever did. Or, alternatively, you are entirely a consequence of the environment that you grew up with. If your mom only ate Cheetos when she was pregnant with you, you would be Cheetos. All of you would be Cheetos. You would be. You would be those Cheetos. It's not like a metaphor. It's not like some woo-woo magic talk. You would literally be composed of the molecular components that were just Cheetos. Entirely, if that's all she ate, and all her mother ate. And it would probably have to go back some bit, and you would get a logarithmic decreasing of non-Cheeto particles that compose you. You are what you eat, very literally. Just literally. You are what you eat. It's not a metaphor. That's what you are. How did I get on that? I don't know. I feel like I had a point and I kind of lost it. Cheetos. Entropy. Right. Trash. Plants invented trash. No, they didn't. There's a farther old example. It's just the oldest example that's coming to mind at this moment. Again, with my stupid monkey brain, only being able to reach so far back in time. When plants, as far as I understand, when photosynthesizing life first evolved on Earth, shit hit the fan hard, and they started producing oxygen, which is trash. I mean, is it trash if it's just killing everyone, or is it poison? Regardless, the story goes, all these plants, or not plants, cyanobacteria? Early photosynthesizing life started producing oxygen, and oxygen is poison, and started killing everything. And as far as I understand, and I can't fact check right now because I'm talking. I mean, I could, but whatever. As far as I understand, that killed 96% of the life on Earth. That introduction of oxygen. Hooray! Photosynthesizer genocide. That's what happened. The origination. Is that an extinction? Is that a mass extinction? I don't know the mass extinctions. Knowing the mass extinctions would probably be an important thing to teach in school. I feel like you can learn a lot from how each individual mass extinction happened. Anyway, maybe it wasn't. Maybe if it's not a mass extinction, maybe I'm misinformed. Either way, if it is the case, and it seems to be at least slightly the case, the numbers might be off. Yeah, trash can be poison. Trash can be poison. Sure. Our trash is poison. That's the issue. The issue isn't that it's inert and entirely sequestered. The issue is that it's mostly sequestered, so we can't break it down, but it's not so sequestered that nothing can break it down, and it gets into tiny little pieces and gets everywhere. It's geometry. It's like the problem with asbestos. There's nothing wrong chemically with asbestos. Asbestos is a great chemical. It's just the geometry of tiny little shards is really bad. It like puts little swords in your lungs. And what happens is it starts cutting up your tissue, and then it doesn't go anywhere because we can't dissolve it. And so then it cuts you, and your body's like, oh, let me heal that. And it's like, nope, let me cut you again. And your body's like, oh, let me heal that. And it's like, no, let me cut you. And so that repeated process of cutting and healing leads to deformities in cell growth, as seems fairly intuitive, which causes cancer. So asbestos isn't chemically cancerous. It's geometrically cancerous. If we could devise something else that's physically or bodily indigestible to the lungs, and form it into tiny little asbestos-like shards, it would probably also have the same properties. Like glass. If you could do that to glass, it would probably hurt you real bad, which I think is what happens with fiberglass. And yet we're like, glass is fine, because glass is fine. Asbestos is fine too. You just have to, form it right. And I guess that's why people are scared of it, is because we used it in a form that was really bad. But if we could find a way to change the form, it's actually a really, really cool material. It's lightweight. It's very I suppose the lightweight is probably down to the geometry. And the insulation is probably down to the geometry too. In fact, thinking about it, asbestos probably isn't any of the things that we call it. It's just the geometry. It's just a rock, right? Rocks aren't lightweight. They aren't, well, they are, well, they're not great thermal insulators. They're thermal banks, which it works as an insulator for a time, but it's not the same thing as an actual, I don't know what the term insulator technically means, but there's a fundamental difference between something that heats up and stores the heat and a vacuum, which just, the heat doesn't go through. It turns into light and goes through the vacuum. Pseudo-vacuum. Trash. Yeah, so we didn't invent trash. Plants invented trash. Then things that used the oxygen came around. I suppose things that used the oxygen were around right away. Did fire exist on planet Earth before photosynthesizing life was around to create oxygen? No? You need oxygen for fire, right? I mean, I don't know. I'm just guessing, but I mean, I'm not guessing at the, there's probably a way to create fire that uses something other than oxygen, right? Probably. I don't know. It just seems kind of unlikely that the only thing out there that can make fire is oxygen. It seems pretty specific, right? Anyway. I'm just rambling. Is this interesting to anyone? I don't know. Probably someone. I mean, I only say that on statistics because anything is interesting to someone, right? Everyone's bored, so do I upload this somewhere? I don't know. I'm showing my face, and I don't know. It scares me, right? Why would that scare me? It's not like anyone can identify me from my face. It's not like I go out in public. So, immunity +1, +2 even. Yeah, I'm just talking. I fear a lot of things. I fear doxing, because I was taught to fear doxing, you know? That's how my parents raised me. Them knowing nothing about the internet and not listening to their advice at all. But still, they repeated the memes that were fed to them of the time, like, you know, ask your parents before using the internet. Yeah, sure. Are you 18? Yes. Why is that a thing? Like, why does that legally cover your ass when it doesn't functionally do anything? Why is our law devised to be abused by people who talk in technicalities and not in actualities? How does that cover anyone's ass if it doesn't actually do anything? Oh, because people are delusional and they can't handle the fact that there's nothing being done, so they want a stupid facade put on top. So that they can be like, they can think to themselves that something is being done about something that nothing is done about. And frankly, I mean, I don't know. I'm not talking about this particular case, but I think in general, when people whine about things should be different, in most cases, and I realize that just setting myself up like this is immediately going to be categorized into whatever people want to, like people hear ambiguous phrases about things in general, and the first thing they do is they go, okay, how can I interpret that phrase such that it makes me hate the person who's talking the most? And I think when I say that people whine, people are going to think to the things that are legitimate, and they're going to go, what? You asshole! And I think they're going to ignore or not notice how, in my opinion, I think most of what's going on in the modern world amounts to complaining about things, and that people in general aren't appreciative enough of the system, because we have this individualist idea that the system is entirely composed of us, and we give equal amounts to the system as the system gives to us, which isn't true. That's true in a vague sense. Humanity, society, these governances, all these systems that we've created over a really long time, all of the energy that they give to us was at one point given to them or created by us. Not us, though. Not you and me. People who are dead. The amount of energy that the system is feeding off of in order to feed us is so much greater than what we give to it. What we give to society is not nearly what society gives to us. Not us as the living. And we should be more appreciative, and we should be more understanding, and we should be less perfectionist. And I understand crippling perfectionism, but, like, I'm pretty sure that every side that engaged in war, any war, ever, was the good side. Not necessarily the governance, but the people. The people are the ones who are going to war, and they're all the same people. It's not like there's a fundamental difference between Russian people and American people, to the point where if you put a Russian family and an American family in the same household, they just wouldn't get along. No, they're the exact same people for all intents and purposes. See, I ran out of water. Water's important. Drink water. But these governments trick, tiny amounts of people trick massive amounts of people into believing that other massive amounts of people are somehow opposed to each other, when it's actually just the tiny little governances that are fighting. That's why the pen is mightier than the sword. That's why the pen is mightier than the gun. Physical weapons are shit compared to writing. Do you know why we don't have physical war anymore? I mean, we do. But do you know why it's kind of fading out? It's not because of some peace treaty. It's not because humans are less brutal and unscrupulous than they've ever been. It's because violence is a weak way to control people. It doesn't work very well. People resist it with everything they can, and at the end of the day, the people who you were trying to recruit onto your side are 50% destroyed. You don't want to destroy them, you want to recapture them. It's a lot more effective to control people politically than it is to control them with violence. On a simple, raw, evolutionary, unscrupulous competition sort of way. There's nothing moral about the drop, where there's no moral motivation for peace. Ideology is overrated. People don't act on ideology. They act on whim. Ideology is simply what is told to the masses in order to trick them into believing that there's some sort of fundamental difference between two people, when really, I've never met a normal person in my life who doesn't just go through their daily life doing whatever they feel like because they don't really care. People don't care. Like that. That was one of the horrible things. I mean, there were a lot of horrible things to a lot of parts of history, but let's just focus on one terrible thing. And I realize when you focus on one terrible thing, people's immediate reaction is to go, well, that terrible thing doesn't matter as much as the terrible thing that's right next to it. And you're probably right. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just want to talk about one terrible thing for a second, okay? The terrible thing that was the German people after the World War II, who engaged or supported the Nazis pretty much entirely on accident. These are normal people, not talking about like people who go out of their way to support Nazi ideology, which there were also, not just talking about there is an existence of fairly normal people who were just going about their daily lives, passively letting things politically happen until they got to a really terrible point where they couldn't do anything. And I think this is really important, and I think a lot of people accept this as really important, especially in Germany. I don't remember the poem, but there's a poem. It's like, first they came for someone, and then they came for someone, or first they came for someone, and I didn't speak up, and then first they came for someone, and I wasn't someone, so I didn't speak up. Then they came for someone else, and I wasn't someone else, so I didn't speak up. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak up for me. And I think it talks to this kind of individualist, eyes to the ground engagement in modern life that Americans are very guilty of. And I think most American families, or sure, most, if they were to be plopped into Germany at the time of these people, would have engaged and accidentally supported the Nazis as these Germans did. We are no better than they. Not the people who are deliberately supporting things, but the passive people who just engage in the machines that throw them around without really caring. And I'm not trying to say there's anything wrong with that. I believe it drives someone to madness to truly try to care about the system that you're supposed to live in. You cannot do both. You cannot both live in the system and care about its inner workings. The people who live in the system have to be treated kind of as a bubble. They can't be given the ability to vote. It has to be separate. There's a difference. There's a fundamental difference in how people look at the world between a game developer and a game player. Many game players would say things that are ridiculous from the perspective of a game developer. They would start off a game and be like, I want a super powerful sword to just kill anything. It's like, no, you don't. You might think you do, but in actuality, you would get bored of the game in 2 minutes if we released it that way. So we craft the game. And there really is a different perspective that is taken when you're attempting to make the system work as opposed to just engage in it. And I don't think that it's fair to the people who are engaging in life to force them to be concerned with all the bullshit that goes on in the system. And frankly, it overwhelms them, and they can't be properly informed because it is so overwhelming. There needs to be kind of a separation of governance and people. I think this is obvious in many smaller systems. I like to use the metaphor, or not even, of a ship or an airplane, right? So you don't ask. There's components of the airplane. There's the pilot, there's the crew, and there's the passengers. You wouldn't expect the passengers to be informed about what the crew needs to do to keep the ship running. And you shouldn't. And frankly, it would scare the shit out of people to do that. And look around us. We're scared shitless because we think this is a good idea. It's not. It only makes sense to pull the group if the group is the crew, not the passengers. So here's something that would happen if you were to keep the passengers informed and ask the passengers. 15 minutes before the plane is supposed to take off, the captain or the engineers might say something like, there's a failure in the O2 systems for the cabin, or there's a failure in cabin pressure. Checking the system, it'll be 20 minutes. What? A failure in the cabin pressure, in the oxygen? What? You're just gonna fix it in 20 minutes and act like it's... Are you kidding me? No! You have to fix that shit now! Take this plane off the runway and go repair that now! We need to be safe! You are safe. The passengers are not regularly exposed to the kinds of informational stimulus that leads them to be informed on what kind of emotional reaction they should have with regards to information on how the crew should function. So why would you ask them? There are people, and I won't name names because I think they're very brave to say things like this, who are in positions, they're say positions of like this, a city planner, stuff like that. Not necessarily the planning phase. I don't know exactly what the difference between someone who plans a new city and someone who starts... But who plans new cities? When was the last time we did that? Anyway, someone who maps out cities that say how you have to make bad decisions. You have to make the wrong decision to appease the people who are voting for you because they don't understand how things work. And I don't understand how city planning works. I didn't go to school for road engineering. I didn't take the time to learn it on my own. I I've played a few city planning games, and that leads me to be, slightly educated on the mechanics of how things work, at least in the context of how these particular programmers implemented them. But they say things like making roads wider actually makes traffic worse, or increases the number of accidents. That people vote for wider roads because it makes them feel safer, because they're further from the cars. But statistically, I mean, that it ends up being that the cars go faster on wider roads, and they speed more, and more people end up getting hurt. And so these people in the city's planning position say basically, well, you have to campaign with the slogan of wider roads, and you have to implement wider roads, even though you, as an engineer, know that these wider roads are contributing to the problem, but it doesn't matter because your knowledge as an engineer is overridden by democracy. It's mob rule. I think that we have a tendency to look at extremely bad examples and get very afraid. And we don't end up looking at, what the system is that creates those examples, and whether or not the rules that are in place, whether or not those extremely bad examples are a consequence of something that maybe is better for us overall. No, I'm not going to bring that up. Too hot topic. I don't discuss modern things. I mean, I do vaguely, but I'm not going to. Some things, make you safer in general, but might lead to extreme bad complications. Surgery in general. All surgery. All of it. Even something as simple as a blood draw. Most of the time, it helps you. Sometimes it makes you a lot worse. Sometimes a simple surgery kills you. Sometimes the treatment for a disease kills you faster than a disease. And so we shouldn't just look at diseases and say, I don't want that to happen to me, therefore it should be removed. That's the player mindset. If we want to devise the rules, we need to think like rule makers and not like rule followers. It's not, I don't want that to happen to me, therefore we should do everything we can to make sure it happens to no one. It's, does it make sense systemically for that to happen to some people? When you get punched, those cells where you get punched die. They're dead. You just sacrificed their lives for your whatever. Why'd you get punched? You could have avoided getting punched. Probably. You could have been more careful. Probably. But that's a bad way to live. Just because some of your cells die doesn't mean the action overall should be avoided. It's like, imagine if the cells in your legs, imagine if you got punched in the face, and the cells in your legs were like, oh shit, I don't want to get punched. No punching. No punching. No fights. No antagonism. No disagreement. No socialization. Just sit there and be safe. Safe. Safety. Safety hurts you. You can't live in a house because a house was devised by people who were just playing the game. These monkeys that grew up in this brutal natural environment that we are, they're just playing the game. They don't understand that the brutality of nature is good. They simply try to protect their children because children are more likely to die. They don't understand that energetically, children should die more easily. It should be easier to tear something down that took less time to build. That creates a balanced system. That's why it happens that way. The only reason we fight against nature is because we grew up in nature, and if we want to actually make the system for ourselves, we need to stop fighting against things that are brutal because they're there because they energetically make sense. We need to stop making laws just because we personally don't want it to happen to us. That's extremely selfish. You need to actually think about what the system needs if we're to be held accountable for what the system needs. Frankly, I think the best solution is for us to not be held accountable for what the system needs. It makes things horrible. It taxes us in ways that we can't handle, and so we give up. And so people are constantly told that you must do everything good, and they can't handle it, and so they become deliberately bad. Unrealistic expectations cause exactly the opposite of what they expect to cause. And it just feels unwise and immature. And you know what? I think that if we look at the system as a big other, as an over entity, just a larger thing that contains us, right? As we contain life forms contain us. You know why we haven't seen aliens? Because we're looking at a very thin band of size and speed. But I forgot again. Something about the over entity that contains us. I don't know. I think my point was relayed well enough. Anything else? I hate goodbyes. And when I say that, I think it gets a little miscommunicated. I think that other people have a different reason they hate goodbyes. I don't know what other people's reason they hate goodbye is. It seems more like they just don't like the goodbye itself, that it's a painful to detach. Which, that may be true. Probably is true. But what I'm more talking about is when I say goodbye, I go back to being alone. And that's always the way it's been, you know. I suppose my family was very isolated. We didn't talk all that much. People spent time in their own rooms. And when I came home from school, I was alone. If I'm not talking to teachers or people, it's just go back to being alone, you know. I suppose school teaches that aloneness, like isolation in a group a little bit. It kind of teaches that because you're supposed to just sit there in this clinical environment watching someone talk to you about things they don't really know about. And you're not allowed to talk to your peers for the most part. You can't even look at them. You're scolded. Kind of teaches us to be alone. Test taking teaches us to think that tests are about succeeding. Tests aren't about succeeding. They're about testing. I think Americans are probably worse at medical tests than other older cultures in general, or at least how they used to be, because we try to succeed tests. We're like, oh, the doctor's testing us? I pass with flying colors. That's not the point of the doctor testing you. The doctor doesn't want to see you succeed. They want to get an accurate test. If you skew things to try to succeed more because that's what you've been taught, to always push yourself towards more success, you're actually making the test worse. You're not being tested properly. Memorization, I think, teaches people to not think. It teaches them to accept what they're told. It teaches them to not integrate understanding. It actually is the opposite of intelligence. Intelligence is taking all the pieces of your brain and putting them together in new and interesting ways. Memorization is just slotting things into your brain and pulling them back out. It teaches you to not interconnect things. You have never once been technically rewarded in school for actually making a clever connection between different subjects or different ideas, because most of the time the teacher's not smart enough to grade you on that, and it's not part of the curriculum, and even if they wanted to, they would get in trouble for giving you points by the parents of other students who think it's unfair for you to be smart and do better in school for being smart. Not me. Ugh, I hate when people do that. I didn't do that. I didn't talk in class. I mean, very occasionally, if I became very comfortable with the teacher, I would do little remarks. But I'm not. Please don't interpret that as me subversively talking about myself, because I was not vocal. I didn't. I don't know. I don't know how to communicate my state of being. Bad. I don't have very much confidence in myself. I don't know, like myself emotionally. I mean, yeah, I see attributes in myself that could have potential value to the group, which should be prioritized over the individual. That is the extent to which I like myself. So, I'm not saying anything. Any of the things I've said, I'm not saying them as though you should believe me. Don't. Don't believe me. Why would you believe me? I don't have credentials. Look at me. Do I look like someone who you should trust? Do I pass? Do I pass any of the standards that we have come to associate with professionalism that one might interpret as my trustworthiness? Look at my credit score. It's shit. I dropped out of school. I live like this and worse. You see a very small picture, of course. Look at this. I'm evil. I've got this cat. Oh, this black cat. It's evil. It's so evil. What an evil boy. Evil little boy. I should drink more water. I'm never gonna end this. I'm bad at ending things. What am I gonna do when I end it? I hate that feeling. Alone again. What's that song? Not On the Road Again. On the Road Again. I don't actually know that song at all. I think I've heard it in commercials. Wait. It has something to do with roads. Roads. D. What is that song? D. I don't know. It's a good song, I think, if I recall correctly. I am so uncomfortable doing what I feel like. Because what I feel like is for me. And for me is wrong. Because you do what's best for everyone. Look at all the political everything. When you're wrong, someone is wrong when they act for themselves. And they're right when they act for the group. It makes it hard to do even whimsical actions. Singing, dancing. I don't, I kind of fell out by book 4. You don't know what I'm talking about. I recall that episode of, I think this was book 4, of Avatar, where there's that village where they didn't dance. I'm pretty sure that's a story that's been told a million times. I think that's the same plot of Happy Feet. I think it's some Shakespearean thing, probably. maybe even older. Romans probably had a story about that. I mean, come on. Look at them. Had satyrs. I don't know. What do I feel? I feel the urge to sing things. I don't know why. But, and then I feel shame? Embarrassment? It's. I feel bad. I feel like it's not my place. I guess that's it. It's a kind of a core feeling of it's not my place to take space. Fuzzies. Whose space am I taking? I'm taking space on my own hard drive. This is why I hesitate to upload things. Like, I would like to upload maybe because maybe someone would see it. Maybe someone would be able to relate to it and it would make them feel better, or maybe they would want to reach out to me and we would have a conversation and that would be nice. Maybe I could even meet a friend or a lover or some human to interact with. But then I am taking space. Then I'm putting myself out there, and when I'm putting myself out there, it feels like I'm telling people what to do, and I don't want to tell people what to do. I'm just sharing the things that I'm thinking about. I feel like I'm imposing on others by sharing things that aren't entirely for them. So I try to make it entirely logical, and I try to make it apply to the person I'm maybe talking to, which is impossible if I'm just talking to no one. And I try to just craft it for the other person. I don't know. And so, like, if I plan on uploading it, I want it to be just perfect and completely polished, and I look completely professional, and anyone who ever saw me would be like, "Oh yeah, I can't disagree with that chap." Not ideologically. I invite ideological disagreements, but like, there's no one who would be like, "Oh, look at that piece of shit doing shitty shit and being a bad." And I don't know. I just want to be valuable to people. I want to have human connection. That's what I want. Two things. Value, connection. And I have neither of those for a long time, and it's not pleasant. I don't know. I get closer to thinking I might upload this because I want to. I've said the reasons. Human connection. Value to others. I don't want to come off like I'm giving people ideas, but I don't know how to craft something that isn't me. This is just me, and I feel like when I talk, people are like, "Oh, you're trying to tell others what to do. You're trying to like preach," and I'm not, and I'm sorry. And I'm not. I don't want to be like this. It's just I'm not happy if I try to cover myself. It hurts. And I've done that my whole life. I've covered myself because people don't like me uncovered. And so I try to be for them, and it doesn't work, I guess. Can't ever be for others because they don't pay enough attention to really, I don't know, make that work. So, play games, watch TV, television. Television is painful. I have it on in the background always. TV shows, YouTube. It's so exhausting, and I hate it, and it's so repetitive. But without anyone talking, it gets really hard to just exist. Things are a lot easier when you have others. Like, everyone's like, oh, go out and exercise. And I'm like, yeah, I agree. I try. I try to get out there. I just, I gotta eat to exercise. And in order to eat, I gotta make sure the kitchen's stocked. And in order to make sure the kitchen's stocked, I gotta take a shower and wash my clothes and clean up my space. Everything just falls apart. And, and it's so much easier with others. It's so easy. And the few moments I've had where I've had people around me as like actual people and not just fellow students or authority figures or doctors or something else that you're not allowed to socially engage with, and you're forced to put up this ice wall for business reasons. Like the brief moments where I've had human contact that I don't know. It just makes it easy, When people are around, it's easy to cook. I just want to. When people are around, I spend hours walking outside and I don't even notice. Without people, I spend 2 minutes walking outside and it's the worst experience of my life. It's so hard without other people. And psychotherapists make it worse. They're just another stupid walled off ice human, facsimile of a human that's like, oh, what sort of doctor can I hook you up with? How can we discuss ideological phenomenon in such a way that it might shock you into motivating your own behavior? What? Well, I suppose I wrapped up long ago. Not that I've ever... Well, I guess I've recorded brief things before, but it seems probably in character for me if I were to make videos, make them 50 minutes longer than they really are, 10 minutes of content and 50 minutes of trying to justify my existence. Alright.